again, everybody, and welcome back into Holy Chaos on Tap. It is week 3 of Lent. It is a Wednesday as I record this episode, and I am in full fast mode as we speak. And if you're wondering what that means, it means that I am fasting through Lent and also Wednesday doing a double fast where I'm abstaining from meat as well. So, and then fasting throughout Lent. That means that I am not eating between meals, trying to limit how much I eat during the day. I actually do a 16-hour fast before I eat or drink anything. So a lot of fasting, but you know, it's fasting. Fasting's actually a good practice. It's good for you, health, mentally, physically, for your health. So thought I'd add it as part of my Lenten challenge, and really has been quite a lift for me from both a physical standpoint, but then also a mental standpoint and spiritual standpoint. So I would highly recommend it if you can. Check with your doctor before doing it. I don't want you to just go out there and start doing 16, 17-hour fasts, and then all of a sudden something bad happens. So, but it's been great. And, you know, I'm kind of in that middle ground right now where I'm like kind of tired and exhausted. Is that because I'm not eating as much? But then at the same time, I'm also exercising and running. There's like a fine balance there where I have to make sure that I'm getting the proper nutrients and the proper fuel during that window when I can eat and drink without overloading and tipping the scale the wrong way. So it's kind of it's an interesting new way for me to progress in my physical and exercise life, but it's fun, and it's also bringing me a little bit closer to God, because obviously with fasting there becomes challenges and there's hardships, and then you just give that up to God and you trust the process. So hope you're having a good Lent. Hope things are progressing well for you. My name is Nick, and again, just an average Catholic dad out here trying my best with 3 little kids, all asking for something at the same exact time. Does that happen to you? Does that happen with you and your family? I was laughing the other day because I was standing in the kitchen. My wife was there. All 3 kids are there. And, you know, it's that time at the end of the, not the end of the day. It's like that in-between time when like the kids are home from school. Wife is home from work. I work from home, so I'm just home all the time. But everybody's in the kitchen at the same time. And all 3 of them are starting to talk at the exact same moment, wanting something all at the exact same time, asking for something, and each one, their voice just keeps getting louder and louder as they try to out-talk the other person. And me and my wife are just looking at each other, smiling, non-verbally communicating to each other and asking, is this really happening right now? As they get louder and louder. I actually felt bad for my oldest son, who he really wanted to ask something, and he actually started to talk first, you know, when you have a conversation going, and he was the first one to start to ask, and then the other 2, the twins, of course, they just jumped in and started feeding off each other. But he couldn't get out what he wanted because his little brother kept getting louder, and then my daughter, just being the pot stirrer that she is, started screaming just to scream, knowing it was frustrating her brothers. Pure chaos, pure chaos, as always at our house. But you know, at least it is in our home, contained in the kitchen, and not someplace public where it's supposed to be quiet and peaceful. You know, like maybe church, maybe Mass. People generally describe Mass as peaceful. And those people do not have toddlers. And because taking the toddlers to Mass is less quiet prayer, less meditation, and more managing a small traveling circus inside of a sacred building, I felt like that would be a good topic to talk about today. So just about every week I've done this podcast since I've started, I usually have opened it up about my latest Mass adventures with the kids and with the family. So they are typically not peaceful. Mornings can be stressful as you try to get kids fed, dressed, out the door. You know, and out the door usually involves like shoes, jackets. You know, it's wintertime, so we're wearing jackets. Then you have to pack a bag, depending on your kids and the age. Could have a wide range of items in that bag. Could include diapers, wipes, water bottles, snacks, some hopefully quiet toys. And anything that can hopefully keep them entertained, coloring books, crayons, something. Everything that is neatly contained in said bag, though, entering church, of course, spills out everywhere once you are in church. It just goes across the pew, on the floor, everywhere. So there's snacks falling on the floor. There's wipes used. Toys or books are spread out. And kids don't know how to control the level of their voice once they go into church. And somehow through all of this, as a parent, we are still trying to encounter God at Mass. This is Catholic dad life. This is Catholic parent life, taking kids to Mass. So for today, I thought, why not spend a full episode talking about something almost every Catholic parent wrestles with? Taking toddlers to Mass and wondering if it's even worth the chaos. Short answer, 100%, 1,000%, 1,000,000%, yes, it is. Long answer, let's get a drink and talk about it. All right, fellas, I hope you got a good stiff drink today for our topic of taking kids to Mass, the ultimate test of survivability with kids and toddlers, and testing your patience, testing your resolve, and testing your faith. It's the trifecta. So this week I'm going with a cab from California, Napa Valley Method. You can see it on the screen there. Thought I mix it up, whether it be, beer, wine, water, coffee. Thought I'd go with the red today because I also have this cup that I got. And again, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it. It's called, it might be hard to see on the screen, but it's engraved Daddy's Sippy Cup. And I got that obviously when I first became a parent, because, when you become a parent, sometimes you just need to have a drink at the end of the day. So, I at the beginning of the show, I talked about my fasting. So there have been Lents where I have given up alcohol for Lent. So cheers to you guys out there that have given up alcohol, or maybe you've just given up bourbon and you picked up wine drinking or beer or whatever. But so the fast that I'm doing is every day, 16-hour fast of no food, no drink, and then I can have water. But that's it. And then I have an 8-hour window there where I can eat, but then I can only eat small meals, no snacking in between meals, and then Wednesday and Friday no meat. So it's really a great fast. And if you have the Hallow app, there's actually I'm not paid by anybody for doing this podcast, but the Hallow app has a pretty good fasting program on there if you're interested in fasting and tying it into spirituality and getting closer to God. But there's a program on there that you can do too. It's called the Daniel fast. It's quite interesting. I've done that one before, and anything that you do that's challenging for your mind or your body, again, it's hopefully to bring you closer to God. So so that's how I'm doing my fast. And then so I'm drinking the red today for our conversation. So let me know what you're drinking, what you've chosen for your drink today. And also don't forget, you can support this show 3 very easy ways. Follow Holy Chaos on Tap on Instagram and on YouTube. Each like or comment helps expand our dad network, so we know we are not alone in this journey of parenting. 1 thumbs up or a cheers in the comments goes a long way. Share the content with other dads. You can either tag them in a video or reel, or share an episode with them. And you can buy me a drink through my website, Holy Chaos on Tap. You can send me $1, $5, $10, whatever you want to support the show. Think of it as sharing a drink with me. So if you have a specific type of wine you like and you want me to try it out, go ahead and hit me up with whatever that is, and I'll try to buy it. I will warn you, though, that I am very much a red drinker. So if you suggest a white one, it's going to be tough for me, but I will try it out. I don't have Patreon or hidden content that is exclusive to membership. You get all of me for free, but if you feel inclined to share a drink with me, you can via holychaosontap.com. Okay, so taking kids to Mass. Deep breath. It's so hard to take kids anywhere. But then to take them to a place that's supposed to be of reverence and quiet and peaceful, and then you bring in the circus, it can be tough. So I honestly cannot remember the first mass we went to with all three kids. It's so if anything, that tells you it mustn't have been that bad of an experience, because I don't remember it. I do know my oldest was probably around 4, and the twins were still in car seats. So I remember we started sitting in our quote unquote our spot, because it was advantageous for us as we were walking in with 2 car seats and a toddler in tow. So we were sort of, I've explained this before on numerous podcasts how our church is, but it's kind of crescent shape around the altar. It has many different pews and different aisles, and where we sat, we're kind of off to the side, and we can kind of sneak out the back if we have to, if things kind of got hairy or squirrely with the kids. So that's where and it was a nice place to kind of sit the car seats out of the way from major foot traffic. So speaking of which, do you I said our spot. Do you guys have a spot in church? Is there a spot that is your seat, or do you just show up and just sit wherever? Honestly, growing up with my family always we always had a spot. It was every week when we went to church, we had our spot, and it was ingrained in me. And I think because of that, I have continued that with our family. So now, even though we don't have 2 car seats, the kids are just all walking in by themselves, we still sit in the same spot. The kids, when they enter church, they go right to our spot, because they know that's where we sit, because we go every week, and that's the place that they sit. So it was fun. It was actually funny. There was one time we walked in, and someone was sitting where we normally sit. My oldest was not even paying attention. The door opened. He just kind of started walking down towards where we sit, and then he just stopped in his tracks. He froze, and he looked back at us, and he didn't know what to do. He was like, "Now what?" So we ended up sitting right in front of that couple, and then that couple never sat that spot again. I think I saw them sitting on the opposite side of church the next time. But 95% of the time we do sit in the same spot, because honestly, it's just easy with 3 kids to sit where we're at. But those early days of bringing kids to church when the twins were still in car seats, the biggest challenge, honestly, I think was just the car seats. The twins were great. My wife would carry one, I'd carry one, and then as they got older, heavier, I would carry them both in, and then just plop them right down, and yeah, for the most part, I think they probably just, in those very, very early days, they maybe slept or just kind of hung out, and then didn't really do much. But it was only recently, it's only recently now that I'd say it's definitely challenging. They're 3 now, and my oldest is close to 6. So that mass is it's a full-blown circus. It's tough, but it's rewarding though too. But I remember one specific mass, and I referenced this in a reel I did a while ago. But my son, I think he was around 4, maybe just turned 5, and he had brought a monster truck to church, and never really thought much of cars or things that roll in church as being a bad thing. I mean, it's a quiet toy, and he was playing with it. He's at that age where he's playing, sitting on the floor, playing with it, playing on the pew, playing with it on the ground. And we're sitting in the last row of the pews, and the church has the aisles slope. It's a sloped church, so that the people in the back rows, they're kind of elevated up so they can see the altar. And I always sit on the aisle side, just because I can keep kids from hopefully running out of the pew, and Father's up there at the up on the altar giving his homily, and all of a sudden I see a monster truck just rolling down the aisle towards the altar, and then gently stopping right in front. And of course, a few people kind of chuckled and looked back to see where it came from. And I swear I swear to this day, that father, in the middle of his homily while he's talking, he like noticed it, looked at it, watched it, and then paused for just a very brief moment to kind of gather himself, and then continued on with his homily. So that made it even better. But I look over to my son, and he's got this look on his face that he just like he lost his entire world. So we're sitting there listening to the homily. My son is leaning over me, looking down the aisle at his monster truck, just all squirmy and like wanting to get it back, and like on the verge of tears because he doesn't have it in his hands right now. I'm just trying to calm him down, like, okay, we'll get it, relax. And so when Father finished and everyone stood up for the creed, I tell my son, okay, walk down and go get the truck. And he takes about a step, he walks out of the pew, takes about a step and a half down the aisle. Probably not even that much. He probably didn't even clear the next pew in front of us. And he just turns around and looks at me, and he's like, nope, I'm not going down there. So he was obviously, I don't know, intimidated. I don't know if at that age you can feel embarrassment, but he did not want to go down that aisle. So of course I go down the aisle to get it, and that was the last time we ever brought anything that has wheels or can roll to church. And you know, that it was just one of many incidents though, and honestly it wasn't even that bad and only involved one kid. And ever since we started bringing the twins and they have grown up, and the amount of chaos that has evolved, it's crazy what happens at Mass sometimes. And you have kids getting upset about someone grabbing someone else's toy, or sitting in someone else's seat, or not liking a snack that is brought, or wanting to go out in the lobby, or talking too loud, and you know, so on and so on. And with the toys and stuff, you know, I've mentioned this on other podcasts, I feel like we're at that age where it's like there's a fine line of when you're bringing kids to Mass, you know, what you should bring as far as like entertainment for those kids. And I feel like we're at a point where we don't need to bring so much. They're bring a coloring book, you know, or bring one toy, but 2, 3, 4 different toys, it's just too much. And there have been some Masses where half the time either me or my wife are not actually in Mass. We're out in the lobby with one of the kids because something's happening. So every week for us, and I'm sure for every parent out there that is like us or similar, it is a struggle. And we ask the inevitable question, why even try? And that question hits a lot of Catholic parents. And it's something that we probably, you know, every couple of weeks we're like, do we really want to go through this again? Do we really want to do this? And is it worth the effort? And it would be 1,000% easier just to stay home until they're older. Easy peasy, just stay home. But honestly, here's the thing. Faith doesn't grow in perfect silence. Faith grows in exposure and in those moments of chaos. That's where faith is growing. So if you're like my family, you probably love Bluey. It was a jumping off point topic for my very first episode in my first season, because there's a reason parents love Bluey. There's a reason why we continually watch it, and it had such a great reception among parents in society, because it captures the beautiful chaos of family life. I grew up loving Seinfeld, and in my adult single life, I would always say I can relate everything to Seinfeld. Every conversation, every situation, I'd bring up a Seinfeld reference. I was like, this is just like Seinfeld. Well, now as I am a parent 6 years in, I feel like I can relate anything to Bluey. And it's funny how like things pop up or things go on throughout our family life, and I'm like, oh, remember that Bluey episode? Or just like that Bluey episode. You know, kids interrupt, they move constantly, they ask questions at the worst possible moment. If there were a Bluey episode about going to church, it would look exactly like what I think a lot of us Catholic parents experience on Sunday mornings, because parents trying to get kids out the door on time is a very difficult thing. And there was an actual Bluey episode about that with Chili trying to get Bingo out the door. So parents trying to get the kids out the door, kids rolling on the floor, parents negotiating snacks, someone asking, are we done yet during the homily? And honestly, that chaos is part of childhood. We expect toddlers to sit still and be quiet for an hour. But it is also something many of us adults struggle with. I mean, let's be honest. How hard is it for you to just sit still and be quiet for an hour? Have that as a Lenten challenge. You know, I laugh sometimes in adoration. So, you know, I go to adoration once a week. It's an hour. And I really make a concentrated effort to just sit still. I try to, I go in and I say a prayer. You know, I usually start with, my adoration is at 3 p.m. on Fridays. So Hour of Mercy. So my adoration hour, I start with the Divine Mercy, and then I start with the Sorrowful Mysteries for the Rosary. And then I try to sit as still as I can, focus on my breathing, and stay silent for whatever remaining time is left. So some people come in and they're constantly fidgeting, moving around, getting stuff out of their purse or getting out something out of their jacket. Same can be said at church. And in reality, people, adults even, have a hard time sitting still and being quiet. And then each week, as Catholic parents, we're asking our kids, hey, sit still, don't move, be quiet. You got to sit still for an hour. I mean, really? You try doing that, you know? So it's kind of crazy to think that we expect that of our kids, when in reality, probably a lot of us can't do that. So when we compare our messy family experience to some imagined version of perfect reverence, we miss something important. Kids learn faith the same way they learn language, by being around it, not by mastering it immediately. Kids don't start talking as soon as they're born. You know, they're around people talking, and then they start to learn how to talk. And my wife always tells me, in regards to, you know, my 3-year-old specifically, they are kids, you know, and I'm guilty, you know, I'm definitely not preaching here. I am guilty of it as the next guy, because I'm always telling my kids, be quiet, sit still, you know, don't move. But they're kids, and she's right. They are kids. So they are still learning, and kids are very active. They're squirmy. They like to move around. They like to talk. They like to figure things out. So it's going to be very tough if we're expecting kids to just sit there, be quiet, and start going along with the mass right away. It's going to be a long time before that happens. There's a moment in the gospel that hits differently once you're a parent, and I've referenced this one before in previous podcasts, but it's perfect for us who have kids and little ones that we're trying to corral and manage and act quiet and reverent and perfect at Mass. Matthew 19:14. Let the children come to me, and do not prevent them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these. Think back to when Jesus was here, okay? It's like, I always like to think Jesus at this time or that time. It makes me think of Ricky Bobby. I like to pretend Jesus as little baby Jesus, all snug in his crib. But think of Jesus back when he was giving homilies and people were flocking to him. Crowds were insane, like Christmas and Easter Mass every day. And the disciples were like parents trying to control the situation. They were trying to keep things orderly, trying to keep people quiet and pay attention, respectful. And how does Jesus react? He says, let them come. Not when they're older, not when they're behaving perfectly, not when they're quiet and reverent, now. Mess and all, chaos and all. You know, that changes how we look at toddlers in church. Last episode, I was talking about one of my church adventures with the family, and I mentioned how the reason we go to church is because we want to draw closer to Jesus, closer to God. And, you know, Jesus does not care that the kids are acting up. He doesn't care that they're, being loud. The old grumpy couple that forgot what it's like to have kids, they care. In fact, I bet Jesus is laughing as he's watching us and our mass adventures, or other parents and their mass adventures. And, you remember in the 90s, I'm going to date myself, and probably there's going to be a lot of people out there that don't remember this or have any clue what I'm talking about. But I think it was in the 90s. There were, when we were growing up, if you grew up in a Catholic home and your parents were all about giving Catholic type of gifts. Yeah, I want a football. Here's a statue of St. Nicholas. Oh, okay. But there was Jesus statues of Jesus smiling and playing with kids, or he's playing a sport, like he's kicking a soccer ball, or he's holding a baseball bat and he's swinging. I felt like they were all the rage among the Catholic families back in the 90s. But that's what I kind of picture Jesus as, is this guy who's smiling and laughing at kids and how they're acting, because he doesn't care that they're laughing, having fun, playing, whatnot. He only cares that they are being brought to him, and we are the ones bringing them to him. That is holy chaos, because Jesus didn't say, bring them when they're quiet. Make sure you control your kids. They're reverent. They know all the prayers. They know when to sit, kneel, stand. They know how the Mass operates. Then bring them to me. That's when I want to see them. No, he doesn't say that. He says, bring them. So here's the truth I think every Catholic parent needs to hear. And it might be shocking and surprising, but kids belong at Mass. I remember I was very hesitant to bring my kids to Mass. I didn't want to do it. I did not want to bring my kids to Mass. Think about that. Think about when I go to the pearly gates and I'm answering for the life that I lived, and Jesus says, so tell me about how you didn't want to bring your kids to me, bring your kids to Mass. I just didn't want to do it. I'm sorry, Jesus. I didn't want to cause a scene. I didn't want the stress. I didn't think it was worth it. I mean, what a conversation that's going to be. I grew up in a very traditional, strong Catholic home. There were some very good things that came out of that upbringing. But honestly, there are some not so good things too. And one of them is my impression of how Mass should be. When I was in my middle school, high school years, going to church with my parents, I was very much at the impressionable age, the age I soaked up stuff like a sponge. It's like whatever was being said or whatever was being shown to me, it's like I would take that in. My parents, after every Mass, they would critique how it went. The biggest complaint was always centered around those parents that had kids, and they'd say like, oh, they need to go to the cry room or take them out. They shouldn't bring snacks into church. That's distraction. Or they should go to a different Mass. And it was like every time there was any kids in Mass like that, there was a conversation afterwards. And, I felt bad because I kind of would, I would start to agree with them. I was like, it was really distracting, and I didn't really like that. So I grew up thinking that was not how you're supposed to behave in church. Now, the church that I grew up in, it was very much a traditional, very buttoned up church. And honestly, it was a dying church. And I didn't realize that until my adult life. I say that because the school was shut down already when I was in middle school. So I was in middle school, I was going to public school, but there was no school at this church. It was shut down. There just wasn't enough kids or families. They also did not have a PSR. So there was no public school religion for those kids that are going to public school, because there wasn't enough kids in that church to warrant having PSR. So I would actually go to PSR down the street to another church. And it was very much an old person church. Not that there is anything wrong with that. Not that Seinfeld. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But it was a dying church. There was no life to it. I didn't know it at the time, but kids were what makes a church family lively and young and thriving. And I had that message implanted on me at a young age, so I didn't want to be that disruption at church. Now, it was my wife who actually convinced me and said, we need to start going to church, and we should be bringing the kids. So, you do what your wife says. So we did. I can't believe how amazing it has been, though. The mass we go to is definitely the kids' mass now. A lot of families with young kids, babies. We have children's liturgy. It is very much a young, alive, active church. And after mass, kids are, you can see kids hanging out with their friends. They're running around, playing with each other in the lobby or at Donut Sunday. That's another thing too. Sidebar here. If you're going to mass with kids, I highly recommend that you hang out a bit after mass. Get to know those other families that you're in the trenches with, because you don't want to just leave right after communion, and you don't want to go right out the door after Father, hot on his heels as he's going down the aisle out the door. Stay and socialize. We're all in this together. They're going to be some tough masses, but everyone has them. That couple over there might look perfect this week, but then next week they're going to be their hair is going to be on fire. So talk to other dads, laugh about it over a donut or coffee. I remember one mass, Father was doing his post-mass announcements, and the kids were just getting a bit loud. And he mentioned from the altar, I know I can hear the natives are getting restless, but we're almost finished here, as he's going through his post-mass announcements. But people laughed, but you can feel it. But socializing after mass to talk about the adventure we all had, it's fun, it's therapeutic, and I also love when the older couples do come up to us and they smile and they say how much they love hearing and seeing the younger kids at mass, and that just it makes it all much more worthwhile. Because you might think you're annoying them or bothering them, but then they come up to you and they say, oh, we love seeing your kids and seeing you at mass. It's so much fun, and it feels so great to see that. So that means a lot when they do that. So I will fully admit, though, that there have been some masses where they have been very difficult, so embarrassing that we leave right away. I remember one mass particularly where the twins were just nonstop at one another, and at one point one was running down one aisle with my wife chasing her, and another was running down the other aisle, and I was chasing her twin brother. And my wife just said, I just want to leave. I am mortified. I just want to get out of here. So that was one mass we did not hang out. After mass we just left. But the old saying, you hear your kids more than anyone else does at mass. That's what people say. You hear your kids more than anyone else does at mass. Nobody else is hearing them. That time, that was not true, because everyone heard it. Everyone saw it as they were just running down two different aisles, and we went chasing. But there are going to be masses like that. Hopefully there's only one mass like that. But I'm not going to lie. There's going to be some tough masses, but kids belong at mass, even when it's messy, even when they're loud, even when you spend half the time standing in the back, not in the actual mass service, because what's happening in those moments isn't distraction, it's formation. It's like I said in my last episode, you're sowing the seeds of faith. Your kids are learning where we go on Sunday, where we pray, where we kneel, the prayers we pray, where we encounter God. They see the sign of the cross. They start to make the sign of the cross. They hear the music. Just remember, we're not raising perfectly silent, non-moving churchgoers. We are raising little saints, little future saints, and hopefully future disciples of Christ. And that process is slow, very painful, sometimes loud, most times probably embarrassing, but so much fun and rewarding. But every mass matters. Every time you bring them matters. Every chaotic Sunday is planting those seeds of faith. So if you're a Catholic parent and mass feels exhausting sometimes, welcome to the club. You're not doing it wrong. You're not alone in the trenches. You're just one of many. And we're doing something incredibly important. We are showing our kids that God belongs in the middle of our family life. We're showing that we can put aside 1 hour a week to come together as a family as a church community to give thanks to God, not just when it's quiet and bedtime, not just when it's before dinner or when it's convenient. Years from now, I promise you, they probably won't remember the meltdowns or the stress that they caused you. I know I don't. I don't remember any of that. But I guess that was just because I was perfect in mass, because my parents seem to think parents should do better at controlling their kids. But seriously, the kids won't remember the spilled snacks. They will remember, though, something much deeper. They'll remember this. This is where our family goes. This is where we meet God. And that memory is what is called a core memory and will be with them forever. God forbid there is a time that they fall away from God or the church. That core memory will still be there to bring them back. So if you're taking toddlers to mass and wondering, is this really worth it? Keep going. Even when it's loud, even when it's chaotic, even when you spend half the time in the back of church, even when you're embarrassed because you're not just surviving mass, you're planting seeds. And seeds grow. So let's end our show as we always do, on a prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Lord, thank you for the gift of our children, for their energy, their curiosity, and yes, even their noise. Help us as parents not to grow discouraged when faith feels messy. Give us patience when the pew feels long, grace when our plans fall apart, and humility when we feel overwhelmed. Teach us to remember that every small act of faith matters, every prayer whispered, every mass attended, and every time we bring our families to you. Plant seeds of faith in our homes and in our children's hearts, and give us the courage to keep showing up, even when it feels chaotic. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. All right, thanks again for listening today. I hope this has helped you in your mass adventures. And, I could probably have 4 or 5 more episodes about mass adventures, and maybe I will have another one down the road a little bit, but it is just such an important topic, I think, for us parents that are starting to bring our kids into the faith more. It's such an important topic, and I think it's worth spending some time on. So appreciate you listening today. Hope it helped. If it did, please definitely share it with another parent, another dad. And don't forget, you can support the show 3 very easy ways. Follow Holy Chaos on Tap, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Each like or comment helps expand our dad network and shows that we are not alone in this chaotic mass adventure. 1 thumbs up or cheers in the comments goes a long way. Share the content with other dads, and you can also buy me a drink through my website, Holy Chaos on Tap. You can send me $1, $5, $10, or whatever you want to support the show. Think of it as sharing a drink with me. I don't have Patreon. There's no hidden content. I don't have exclusive email lists or memberships. You get all of me for free. But if you feel inclined to share a drink with me, you can do so via holychaosontap.com. Thanks again for listening, and please hit me up. Let me know some of the mass adventures that maybe you and your family have had over the years. And good luck out there. We're all in the same boat. Until next time, cheers.